done with casting pearls amongst the swine. 'Cause each of us is running out of time. It's already started silent, you won't hear a chime. You'll be measured and punished for each heavenly crime.
Good evening and welcome to the Belfast Bapcast. This evening we have on Chris Mathieu. Chris has spent years diving into the untold layers of human history, psychology, manipulation, hidden powers, and esoteric frameworks operating behind global events. His platform has become a hub for researchers, whistleblowers, experiencers, and thinkers who challenge the approved narrative and drag suppressed truth into the light. So today we're going to explore the patterns he's seen across culture, spirituality, and society, and why more people than ever are beginning to wake up to the psychological war unfolding in real time. So, Chris, welcome to the Belfast Bapcast. Absolute pleasure to have you on.
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, so just to get stuck in, I would just like to, first of all, ask what led you down this rabbit hole to begin with?
Oh, well, it was a series of events, really, but I can look back to specifically around 2012 when I was going through a pretty rough time in my life. It was going through a divorce, and I had just started a really good job, but I was not happy with the job itself because of what I was doing, very corporate sales job. And things were just in a state of flux for me. I was kind of lost in everything. I didn't have any spiritual path. I wasn't doing any research of any kind. I was just going to work, going home, having a few drinks, and then passing out and repeating the same thing every day. So it was pretty lost. And then something just kind of came over me, this overwhelming urge to just start doing something else. And I s- I was always, whenever I was a kid, interested in the paranormal and strange mysteries, UFOs, hidden occult concepts. And I always was fascinated with that stuff growing up. And when I hit my teenage years, I kind of lost interest in all of it, fell into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And something just brought that back for me, that desire to get back into the to researching weird stuff. So I did. I started reading again, and I found that YouTube was amazing during that time period around, 2012, 2013. Those were the years I was really getting deep into the research, but it was amazing the information that you could find back then that wasn't censored. And through researching different concepts and topics that I started to get interested in again, paranormal, ufology, spirituality, hidden history, all that stuff. I also started becoming aware of some amazing authors and researchers that really did some amazing work in those specific fields. And I it was not doing well for me to try and explain this stuff to my family or friends. In fact, it drove a pretty big wedge between me and my family and a lot of friends, even broaching some of these topics. So I had to get it out somewhere. I started a Facebook blog, and this was at about 2013, 2014. The Facebook blog was Forbidden Knowledge News, and people were interested in it for some reason. And I started getting a little bit of a following, and I started to realize I don't know shit about any of these topics. I mean, I've done a little bit of research into the surface level of all this, but I should really talk to people who spend their lives and immerse themselves in these topics and share that with my audience here. And it eventually turned into a YouTube channel where I started reaching out to some of those folks and interviewing them, and amazingly enough, they were glad to come on my tiny little channel at the time, and it again started picking up a little bit of steam. And Forbidden Knowledge News YouTube channel eventually became a podcast. I had now really good friend Charlie Robinson. He was one of my early guests. He's the octopus of, the author of several books, including The Octopus of Global Control, Hippocrazy, and a bunch of other ones. And he suggested that I start a podcast with the information that I was doing. And at the time, I really had no idea what a podcast was. It was around 2015, 2016. So I started that. I got hooked up with my now good friend and producer, Corey Hughes, who is also the author of A Warning from History, a book about the JFK assassination. And we started the Forbidden Knowledge Network, our podcast network. He already had a few. Actually, he had some cryptocurrency podcasts that weren't doing anything, and he decided with me, to switch up the style that he was doing. He started Conspiracies and Paranormal, and Forbidden Knowledge News was the first show. It eventually became pretty damn successful, and I'm very blessed for that, and I'm grateful that I get to do this every day and talk about weird stuff, and
It is
that
a
was how it started.
it is an absolute honor, isn't it, just to do exactly what you love, which
Oh,
is,
yeah, it is.
I mean, I love nothing more than going down rabbit holes, providing there is some form of conclusion at the end of it. You know,
Mm,
that's what we're very much on this channel about, trying to bring everything together into one picture. So we've had quite a wide range of guests as well, ranging from Kathy O'Brien, Johnny Cerrucci,
mhm,
Dr. Colin A. Ross, loads and loads. But what surprised me the most is just how given people are with their time,
yeah.
you know, and unnecessarily so, you know, and I suppose it's the want to get the knowledge out there as well. So, out of all the topics that you have covered, which is quite vast, which one would you say has gripped you the most?
I couldn't say if there's one in particular, but I probably what I've been really immersed in is the nature of reality as it relates to people's experience with non-human intelligences and even otherworldly realms, how the experiences of a near-death experience or altered states of some kind, meditation, even dreams have profound crossover and seem to be connected in some way if we step back and take a look at people's individual experiences. I'm looking a lot at synchromysticism and how events in our lives can be strangely connected and brought up throughout our lifetime through certain what seem to be mystical events and happenings, and even strange communication from the universe or reality itself through
Yeah.
things like songs or dreams or even contact with non-human intelligences. So I'm really interested in what really just lies beyond our normal perception.
So, at the beginning of your journey, if you're anything like myself, it was probably, well, for me, it was a lot of confusion because there were so many moving pieces.
Yeah.
And it's only when you sort of take a step back, you actually see that everything is connected, you know, from the forbidden history side of things like Tartaria, etc., to suppression of memories, to like the orphan trains, the moving around the
Mm,
population, you know, like everything is connected and interconnected. And what I have seemed to come to the conclusion of, that there always seems to be a wee Jesuit hand
mm.
behind the curtain somewhere, pulling the puppet strings.
It does seem that way. I've had several guests that have been deeply immersed into history of secret societies, the infiltration of different theological and religious and political institutions, and how basically we can look towards the Jesuits, the manner and the methods that they use of infiltration, and compare it to everything that's happened now, and the institutions that have been taken over, in a sense, by these groups. They basically act as parasites, latching on to other ideologies, other religions, adopting and integrating the beliefs and twisting it into something completely different. So we can look at it and say, yes, it's originally Jesuit influence into all these secret societies and very powerful groups, but eventually it latched on to Freemasonry, to Rosicrucian. It just infiltrated every little aspect of it. Like I said, like a parasite. So now it's just part of everything. It's part of Catholicism, Judaism. All the most powerful parts of these groups and the most powerful individuals have been kind of immersed together into this, now what we would consider Illuminati or the New World Order, but it's all does seem to stem from that Jesuit influence.
So even the forbidden history side of things, like Anatoly Fomenko, it was the Jesuits who pretty much destroyed most of his work and suppressed all of his work, and what you were saying there about infiltrating different religions and taking them on board. And we have the classic example of the Reformation getting destroyed by the Schofield Bible and,
Yeah.
through Jesuitical interpretation of the biblical texts. And like it used to be 100 years ago, if you went into a Protestant church, they would have told you that anyone would have told you it was Rome was the whore of Babylon, but that has been deballed over the years by the Jesuit infiltration.
Mm, yeah. What's happened and what is seemingly going to continue to happen is a multi-generational plot to take over every institution and every aspect of our reality. It seems that these very powerful groups, they use, in a sense, programming and mind control to seed the future generations, to be sure that they're, in a sense, raising
Compliant.
psychopaths
Yeah.
that will carry out the multi-generational plot that has been essentially prophecy for these people for thousands of years. But only the most powerful groups are going to have the understanding of what's really unfolding, and all the pieces that fall under that within this power pyramid, they probably don't even have to know what's going on at any deeper levels. They just have to take their orders and carry them out. But as far as the infiltration of all the institutions and everything that's happened, it has to be at a slow, long pace because it's what's worked over the years, and people tend to expect, for example, after 2020, we expected the pandemic to be a kickoff to basically the end of the world, where digital IDs would be rolled out within a couple of years. We'd be completely locked down and this dystopian realm would just unfold automatically. But it's much deeper than that. It's much more complex. There's many more layers, and it takes a very long time for them to achieve anything. So what we've seen with COVID and everything that's happened over the past 5 or so years, it is most likely a warm up to many more levels and layers of operations before they can come to fruition, if there is an actual goal for this, or if it's just to maintain that control by problem, reaction, solution events throughout history.
So one thing you did say there was mine just went blank there, but um, you were saying just after I'd asked you the question there about I was saying the infiltration of the the Protestant church, and then you were saying it was multi-generational. One sort of curveball for you. What's the biggest lie you think we're still living under right now?
Mm. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There's the level of theatrics that we're subjected to is beyond what most people would even fathom. So you start looking into the smallest level of corruption and you peel away that layer, and there's 100 layers of corruption beyond that that connect to other conspiracies, to other bits of corruption, to different people that have no idea what the left hand is doing. It's all compartmentalized. So the biggest lie that we are living under is, as far as, let's say, let's break it down for the United States, that we are in a sense a free country, that we are a democratic republic in any way. No, it's a military empire, a military corporatized empire that is controlled essentially by the Bank of England and the military industrial complex. So there's many lies, many layers, and unfortunately, everything that governs our reality, the systems, the politics, education system, it's all built on a false foundation. We have no idea what our real history is. It's hard enough to go back 10 years from now and get accurate information. They're in the middle of resetting our reality again right now by erasing things online, by getting rid of books, by outright changing information. I think that's what's going on with the Mandela effect. They're just
Yeah,
changing shit online and changing books, but we have no idea what happened 50, 100 years ago. And I believe they periodically do these mini resets every decade or so, just to be sure that the next generation is missing key pieces of information that would explain what's
a
happening in
lot.
our
Yeah.
reality in any way. Yeah.
Do you
And then
feel
they have
that
to go ahead.
the current state that we're living in, obviously, the digital era, shall we call it,
Mm.
has made it even more difficult for people to retain information
Oh,
as well, because everything is momentary, and it's, what's main news today is tomorrow's dustbin, and it's forgot about, and you
well,
move on to the next, and there's no sort of categorizing of anything. It's just one event, move on, another event, move on, and before you know it, like, take COVID for example. As
mhm.
you said, everybody thought that was the beginning of the end. Now, as soon as it kicked in 2020 over here, my initial thoughts were, "This is like communism training or something. There's something not right here." I didn't
Yeah.
fully think it was the end of the world, but I was like, right, so they're wanting us to stand 2 meters apart. So that's just no human connection. They're not wanting us to, talk. They're wanting us to report on each other. I think it was more an event to see how ready and how compliant society was to
Hmm.
draw them into a bigger level of control. And I think that
100%.
is ultimately going to lead on to the digital IDs. And, over in America, there you have Palantir, and Peter Thiel, and the old Trojan horse himself, Donald, bringing it in.
Hmm.
So it amazes me how what once would have been a very educated right wing. I hate talking about left and right paradigms because it's another thing created for us to play within. But
Hmm.
obviously, it's very big in America, left and right. And those who would have been so called truth seekers and all the rest are just blindly walking behind Donald like he's a savior,
Yeah.
some sort of messianic figure. And he couldn't be any more open about his deceptions. It's, if you've eyes to see, you can clearly see.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the technology aspect and the psychological reaction to high impact events and social media and the way our younger generations handle events and the way that the masses are reliant on technology, this is the crux of everything. This has been a massive part of the long game, is to install this level of technology that they have understood is going to be a governing system for a very long time. They've been working towards this, but it's another multi-layered phenomena that occurs with this, because in 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we were starting to experiment more and more with things like MK Ultra, and they were really using Hollywood and the CIA to implement some of the things that they were learning about mind control and try and see how it would work on the masses. This evolves in our modern day. We don't have to have people being taken and tortured for MK Ultra programs to create assassins and psychopaths and zombies. We are just
Creating them.
exposed to the technology
Yeah.
that they've used. You combine that with the pharmaceuticals that most people are reliant on, and this can cause states of psychosis and hypnosis. And you get a little push online from certain algorithms or even certain groups that monitor people, and you can shift and mold minds that are subjective to hypnosis, or they are easily swayed. You can get them to do many things, and COVID was a great example. You had neighbors ratting on neighbors for not wearing masks and not standing 6 feet apart and whatever other nonsense that was happening. But it goes deeper than that. Some believe that even a lot of the school shootings, assassins, people who snap and go off the deep end for seemingly no reason or for very strange reasons, this may be a part of the mind control efforts that have been implemented into our society for a very long time. So basically, they're attempting to control the masses in many different ways with the use of technology. And it seems to be working for a lot of their purposes. People are very reliant on technology right now, and the level of AI that is being implemented to govern reality is very concerning.
Very, very concerning. I'm going to just take you back 2 seconds. You said that you had previously been into all this stuff and then lived a life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Mm.
At what point did you realize this was not sheerly political and not sheerly power, and that there was a spiritual aspect to this all as well?
Oh, well, that was a big part of my journey, because when I started, I didn't have any spiritual path, and I was really bothered by a lot of the corruption and didn't know what to do with that. So it forced me to look into a spiritual path, because everything else in our reality was so dark and evil. I figured if there's something this evil, and there's groups and people out there that are sacrificing children and worshiping Satan, then there has to be something good. And I dove into many different spiritual possibilities, started meditation, but it was through my own contact experiences with either what you would consider an intelligence like your higher self or an angelic being. I still have no definitive answer as to what I was communicating with. I can tell you that it felt benevolent, and the outcome of all the communication and everything that has happened has enriched my life beautifully. And I have a connection with God and a connection with Christ, and it's led me to the most wonderful place ever. So I don't think it was communication with anything malevolent. Most likely, if you had a gun to my head, I would say it was my higher self, which in my understanding is just the version of our etheric selves that is closest to the divine or closest to source, that has already experienced everything and is maybe guiding us along and giving us nudges every once in a while. But it was through a series of meditation first, and then psychedelics, and it led me to some very profound experiences and information that was shared with me through that intelligence. And that's where I really kind of I dove into spiritual exploration, and it led me down some crazy paths. It was some scary moments, some wild moments, but ultimately, it led me to a very wonderful place. I no longer utilize the psychedelic end. I still meditate and pray and things like that, but yeah, I'd have to say it was definitely due to the meditation and psychedelic exploration that got me to where I'm at now.
So you mentioned Christ and God there.
Mm,
For me, that would be Christ is king and God
mm,
is the source.
mhm,
And the reason for that, that's confirmed it for me, is all these, mass child sacrifice and all these wars and all these rituals are satanic and right out
mhm,
of the Bible. So to me, it only makes perfect sense that the duality side of that would then be Christ and God. And I think that people like yourself and myself who have been entrenched in this sort of research and this sort of study have the risk of also being lost in another lane that has been created for us as well, of endless intellectual masturbation with no conclusion.
yeah, yeah,
And all these things are pointless if there is no redemption or no way out.
mm,
It's great to know these things, but is without the answer of Christ, or without the answer of God, or without the answer of an eternity or
mm.
something greater than this existence, then really, what is the point?
Right, that is where I was at for a very long time. I had I had to come to the conclusion that there was something beyond this. I was entering into this kind of Gnostic understanding of prison planet. Is there anything beyond the afterlife? You listen to David Icke, who says even when you die, the archons will or pose as your ancestors or relatives and tell you everything bad you did and send you back and spank you and tell you you have to do it all over again so that they can feed off your loosh. I was just so depressed by that possibility. I said, no, there has to be something more, something else. And I had a very extremely profound psychedelic experience that was it was a near death experience, essentially, that I had a full um what do you call the
Out of body.
life review, basically. And I was experiencing demons, and it led me to a real tangible physical event that confirmed that I was looking for Christ, and this is where the road basically ends. This is the answer that I was looking for, is a faith and a connection with Christ and God, and which I didn't have before. And that's a wild story. I can tell you about it if you want, but that's essentially what led me to that.
So, in your prayer, I know it's getting very personal, but in your prayer life, are you praying to Christ and God, or are you just praying to, like,
Oh, Christ, yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. So that settles my spirit, because I hate nothing more than the the intellectual masturbation side of things, because if you're only searching for stuff for the sake of having information, then what's the point? Um, my whole idea behind this is wanting to set people free off the chains of their mind. Not
Mhm.
further add weight to their mind,
Yeah.
which is potentially what we could be doing by not bringing it back to there is a source, and which is Jesus, and which is the Lord. And that I think is very important to drive home, not in a preachy way, because nobody likes a fucking preacher.
Yeah.
I couldn't be a preacher. And but if there wasn't, it removes all hope and removes all meaning of anything, because if we're only here to just survive the mind attacks, trying to make us malleable into these wee like worker mice, it's like, what would be the point? There has to be something greater. It only makes sense, even just the sheer the beauty of the human body, the complexity of the
Yeah.
human
Oh, yeah.
body. That doesn't happen by two particles colliding in antimatter. That never has anything constructive came off calamity. It doesn't make sense. So the only thing that does make sense to me is if all these nefarious sides of humanity is working towards, like CERN, etc., they all seem to be trying to open another dimension and bringing portals. Even the Vatican was opening portals under the Vatican last year. You know,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
there's clearly a satanic element. So if that case, in a world of duality, there has to be a Christ and a God. So,
Mm.
and I don't even care about offending other religions, because none of them have the same depth of answers as to what the Bible does. And
Mm.
even they even borrow from the Bible. Whereas you'll have some people will say that the creation story, for example, is like been done over and over throughout history, but when you actually look into it, that's bullshit.
Hmm.
And the God in three persons, etc., and they bring that back to Set and all the different parts of history, but they're picking and choosing, and it's not the actual case. The Bible is very unique and very much
Mm.
standalone, and has yet to be proven wrong.
Mm.
And it's stood up to even historians. It's one of the most historically backed books in the ever, really. Your guy Wesley Huff, that was on the
Mm.
Joe Rogan show, the Christian apologist. I wouldn't be an overly big fan of his, but he's doing some very, very good work in driving home that it's not a fairy tale story. There's actual
Yeah.
historical evidence behind this as well. And if we're prepared to believe in Napoleon, for example, then we should be prepared to believe in Christ, because there's more evidence to suggest that Christ walked the earth than there is
Mm.
Napoleon. So it's a very easy leap of faith. And in regards to the psychedelics, I spent a life on drugs. So DMT, all that stuff, tried it all. My experience with psychedelics very different to yours. I felt I was entering a demonic realm. Um,
Mm.
there was no peace for me in my psychedelic
Mm.
moments. Like the
I
machine
utilize
else.
psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and I really was never a fan of anything synthetic like DMT or LSD. I grew my own mushrooms. I don't know if that really essentially makes a difference for anyone else but me, but it really, for me, it added a level of comfort knowing that it all came from me and what I was creating, growing from my own love and not exposing it to anything toxic or synthetic and like that. But yeah, for me, it was the psilocybin that I utilized, and I'd be honest, there were demonic experiences, and it was because I had inner demons that I needed to face. And for me,
Yeah,
the psilocybin would bring that out. And it was like, here it is. You have to face this. You can't run away from it anymore. You have to slay this demon. And after I would face whatever trauma or negative energy or even negative demonic attachment that was holding on to me, it would release and I would feel that connection again with source, something, a connection to a part of me that had been blocked by
dormant. Yeah.
these dark spirits. So it overall, yes, it was a very very positive experiences for me, very terrifying at times, but it was all for a greater purpose. And ultimately, I don't use them anymore. I've got what the
You need
the ultimate desire is to find that spiritual connection. I found Christ, and that was it. I'm out.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And what it was, I've just remembered what I was going to ask you previously. So you had said about the medication, especially in America, it's they consume, I think, 80% of the world's medication. Dr. Ross was telling me last week. And like all these medications, so like the SSRIs, quetiapine, all these antipsychotics, they all shut down your your prefrontal cortex, and like you lose the ability to feel and be emotive. And like all these school shooters have all had SSRIs in their system.
Mm.
Adam Lanza, all the rest, um, been present in everyone, and America especially seems to be like the testing ground for the world. I don't know what's like living there, but certainly outside
Mhm.
looking in, it seems like everything that is to be tested is tried in America first, and then it spreads out. So, like the mass gender issues and the mass all that stuff, sort of seemed to start in America and spread out, and now the rest of the world catches up. And you've got all this gender dysphoria and all this mad stuff going on that's confusing people even before they get a chance to start looking at the realities of life. And it's like this is intentional, clearly intentional.
Mm.
Like the waters are being muddied from the get go for people. Nobody's even getting a chance to ask the bigger questions anymore.
You're absolutely right about the United States being an experiment, an experimental ground. Manly P. Hall wrote The Secret Destiny of America. And although he didn't present that as the dystopian reality we are now in, there was indeed a secret destiny for this country. And I believe all along it was to be this new Babylon, this immoral, technocratic, Luciferian landscape where they can mold most of the people to become something that is a part of this new, for lack of a better term, Luciferian system that they're building. And yes, I think the United States is ground zero for all of that. And unfortunately for us here, the only way out is not to participate in the dystopia, in the anti human agendas. And it gets more and more difficult. All they have to do is another high impact event, shooting, false flag, and then people, the fear kicks in and they're able to slide in these new dystopian anti human agendas. And that's part of the long game that I was talking about earlier.
It's whenever you were talking about the long game as well, what sprung to mind was Yuri Bezmenov, the Soviet
Mm.
defector back in
Mhm.
the 80s. And I mean, we are living right now in exactly what he was describing. I mean, back then he said that America was already demoralized. The entire West has now been demoralized, and it's free reign. And I don't think it's communism. I think it's communism is linked to that bigger Luciferian system.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not the Jew or whatever. They hold up
Mhm.
these wee enemies for us to get angry at, and then they can slap labels on us like anti-Semitic or whatever. So it's very convenient. They always give us our they'll provide it's problem reaction solution every time. They'll provide the paradigms within which you can play, and we play like
Mhm.
little machine mice. And even likes of David Icke, Alex Jones over here, Russell Brand, they're all part of the system too. I fully believe, and they're to act as just markers on the road, just to keep people with a wee bit of
Mhm.
knowledge to satisfy the curiosity. But then obviously, like David Icke, divert you down the Archons or Alex Jones. They're turning the frogs gay. It's like, yes, Atlassine's a real thing, Alex, but there's no need to like make us look like fools by believing it,
Yes.
And
100%.
it's like nobody has clarity anymore. It's
Mm.
it's
Well,
scary.
they've managed to infiltrate anything that has potential to be good for humanity. They've done that going back as far as our documented history. But what's happening now with the alternative mainstream media like Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, all these talking heads,
Yeah.
they've managed to bring the attention to those folks, and those folks are talking about mainly the quote unquote conspiracies that people like myself were talking about 5 years ago, just to bring that attention in, and then sprinkling utter nonsense and BS into everything else. And there's been a sad state when it comes to the state of our alternative media. You look at some of the podcasts and researchers and channels that I really respect back in whenever, say, from time period 2012 to 2018. This was a period where there wasn't that algorithm of censorship that
Mm.
kicked everybody off of YouTube, that stopped suggesting things on Facebook. All of that happened in 2018. But before that, people were able to grow. Even the quote unquote conspiracy theorists were able, it seemed to have this organic growth to them. My channel was one of those back in the day. It grew very quickly. It got 32,000 subscribers within a couple of years, and the videos were getting good viewership. And then there was plenty of other content creators and independent media that was in the same boat as me. They were growing, they were getting huge, and they were doing really well, seemingly organically. 2018 came when basically everything just started getting shut down. People's YouTube channel were getting taken away left and right. Mine eventually did in like 2019 or 2020. And the information flow was just cut off, and so was the growth to the some of the big content creators that were coming up or had gained some traction around that time. After that, you can look at my numbers after 2018 and the numbers before that. It's such a night and day difference. I'm getting, a couple hundred views on a channel that has 32,000 subscribers. That doesn't make
Makes
any
no
sense,
sense. No.
really. But there's also a bunch of other people that are in the same boat as me. And they had, you look at their subscribers, they've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but their videos are getting 1,000 downloads, a few hundred. It just doesn't make sense.
S-
Then you look at the Tucker Carlsons and the Alex Joneses and all these guys, and they are absolutely some of the highest viewed videos you will see out there. There's no shadow banning. The algorithm is not slowing them down one bit. So I have to question any of these newcomers that are presenting
Blowing up.
pretty good information, but they're blowing up and the algorithm loves them for some reason.
Well,
But
that brings me
the
to
original
something.
OG people are shadow banned. Yeah.
So a lot of the original OG people have now been allowed back on. A lot of the old channels have been
Yeah.
reactivated. So
Mine
I have
has,
a
yes.
running theory behind that, and it is going to be to see who is real and who is not, because I do believe
Mm,
that digital ID is coming in here very quickly, and it's going to be made a, if you do not have digital ID, you cannot have your channel, and then anyone who remains on gets their digital ID is clearly part of the system.
mm.
And you know what I mean? And I think like they were all reactivated at one time. It was very, very strange. Like channels that I never thought were going to come back are now back.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, there has to be something, because it's not like the world or Google or YouTube has got less censored or
Right.
wanting you to know more about the world. Really, that I feel that there's something deeper behind it, and what I've came to the conclusion of is that it's to see who's going to take digital ID or not, and
Mm.
then we'll know who the real truth tellers are and who isn't, who's
It's
here for the
interesting,
money.
man. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Because you're right, they reactivated all of the old school channels. I mean, most of them, my friend Charlie's, Lindsay, a few others that was in the same boat as me. They just got canceled out of nowhere. and they're back, but the viewership is dog shit. Basically, we're only getting a few hundred downloads, but that is interesting. That could be a possibility. I I don't know, because there was also supposedly a massive lawsuit against Google for quote unquote censorship during the Biden administration, and this is supposedly what triggered them giving back everyone's channel. But we're just in a very weird period of time, because I look at all the other platforms and there are varying levels of censorship on each. Unfortunately, in order for me to make a living, I have to use social media to promote my show. That's the only thing I am ever on social media doing, is promoting my show. But Facebook is horribly censored. I can't get any new people to see my posts. My followers stopped years ago on the Forbidden Knowledge news page. Same thing for Instagram. I can't get anything to grow on there. So social media is obviously still covered by whatever this algorithm is. And then they have the platforms like TikTok. I decided to give TikTok a shot a few times, and my stuff gets a lot of views on there,
TikTok
thousands
seems
and
to be
thousands.
pretty
But I get
okay. Yeah.
kicked off. After I post about 5 videos, I get banned and I create a new TikTok account because it's getting a lot of views. So I do see a bit of a translation when I post videos on TikTok. We get more podcast downloads. So I'm like, this is good. I want to do that more. And every time I get about 4 or 5 videos in on that account, boom, I
Boom.
am banned. They take me down. So I'm on my 5th TikTok account and it's doing pretty well so far. I don't know. We'll see. But it is interesting how these different platforms are operating.
It's so easy to grow on TikTok, and it does seem to
Yeah.
be a lot less suppressed. I've yet to be banned on it, so fingers crossed.
And X is
But
another one.
X,
X
yeah.
doesn't seem to be.
So here, you know, with all this, so I feel it's part of a big, like, the
Yeah.
old saying of Shakespeare, the world is a stage and everybody must play their part. So now that we have Donald Trump in after Joe Biden, the whole left right paradigm bullshit,
Mm.
we're supposed to believe now that Trump is for free speech and all the rest, even though he's introducing Palantir and digital ID and like more tracking than ever.
Yeah.
So it has to appear that the social media platforms are becoming more free speech
Mm.
as well,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
really in reality it's a load of bollocks. Like, take Elon Musk for example. He is supposedly the bastion of free speech. What glue does one have to be sniffing to believe such a thing?
Yeah.
The man is a multi-billionaire technocrat. He is not here for the betterment of humanity. It's he is allowing his platform to appear as such. I fully believe, and it is certainly a more open space since he has taken over it. But I believe it's for an agenda as well, and I believe it's to let the so-called woke right, the ones who supposedly are truth seekers, etc., be placated.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, there you go, son. There's your wee free speech.
Well, everything they're doing requires our participation. And I think one of the most important layers of what's unfolding is the psychological manipulation to get people to believe that it's worse than it is, basically, to get people to hate each other, to believe that we're on the verge of a civil war, to believe that UFOs are about to invade, to believe that the next pandemic is happening. So we're in that constant state of fight or flight, so that we will blindly do whatever daddy government tells us, because of course they'll protect us. But in reality, I think it's much different. I don't think we're giving them as much participation as they require to achieve these goals. I think there's a lot more people that have become aware of the nonsense over the past few years and are slowly starting to check out. They may not talk about it. They may not want to get fired from their job. They may not want their family to think they're weird, but they have an understanding of some of the things happening, and they think this is more and more people every day. And I don't see them being able to roll out the brain chips and the integration of biology with technology and these wild transhuman things that they're trying to do I think a lot of rejection is coming on our part, and I think we need to continue to check out as much as possible and stop participating with every anti-human agenda that is coming forward. Now, they're going to make it extremely difficult, like you were saying, with the digital IDs and not being able to purchase or participate or go online or make a living. Yeah, it's most likely coming. So we're going to have to navigate that as it comes. But what we're doing, things like this, these conversations are bringing more awareness, and people are deciding right now whether they want that future, whether they want a future where an AI robot dog could bust in their door and rip their nuts off because they posted something online that daddy government didn't like. I don't think we want that world.
I was arrested 3 times a month for posting stuff online.
No,
Yeah. Had a
really?
door put up in my hall, assaulted by the police.
What?
All sorts of madness. This
It's
country's
fucking
further
crazy.
down the line than what America is in that
Wow.
regards. Now the cases have been largely thrown out. There's a couple still ongoing, but I mean, to be awoke at 5 a.m. with somebody trying to hammer your door in is a pretty
Dude.
shocking experience. I took it in my stride and whatever. I have the peace of Christ in my life, thankfully, and there's not really much can shake me anymore. I don't care.
Mm.
Do as you
Mhm.
will. Not do as thou wilt. I say do
Yeah.
as you will, because
Yeah.
that is the whole of the law. Because I follow Jesus, and you can do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't really matter. I know where I'm going at the end anyway. And I think though,
Mm.
is it a mass awakening currently or a mass deception? Because if personally, if I was just waking up to all this, I'd want every fucker around me to know.
Mm.
I'm not going to be
Oh,
hiding it
yeah.
from my family. I'm not going to be hiding it from my friends. I'm going to be screaming it from the fucking rooftops
Yeah.
because, people's souls are at risk. And it's not just a case of, well, you either take a digital ID or you don't. It's you're agreeing and capitulating to that Luciferian system, and you're now part of it, and you're swept away in it, or you're not.
Well, I learned the hard way that it doesn't even work. If you're trying to force something on a person and they're not ready or they don't want to hear it or they're in their own thing, they just need to go and experience and come to
Of
that
course,
conclusion on their own. So I that's the whole idea behind my show is I come here, I give people a platform to come and listen. And I tried the whole riding down the street, yelling pedophiles and lizard people and Satanists, and my neighbors thought I was crazy, of course, but honestly, looking back, it really wouldn't have done any good either way. They weren't ready. But I can look back as well now to some of those people who rejected all of that. And now they're calling me and they're like, hey, you were right about what's going on with all this stuff. And people are reaching out to me now. Those same people who thought I was a nutcase and didn't want to have anything to do with me, they're starting to come around. So I have hope in that sense. And everybody is at their own place in this weird journey, but I
I
do
think
agree that
wisdom.
we're reaching a time of urgency. I would agree there.
Yeah, I think wisdom though is having the information, understanding that you're a witness, but you're emotionally attached from who takes the information on board and who doesn't. As long as
Mm,
you're doing your duty of getting the information out there,
yeah,
then your job is done because you're only responsible for yourself and your own soul. And that even goes for the family around you. Yes, you can try and spiritually guide them, you can try whatever, but ultimately everyone will make their own choices. So you have to remove the emotions from the the campaign as such. It's like this is what's going on. You do
yeah,
with this information as you please, but you cannot then come down the line and say to me, "You never told me." You know,
yeah. I'll
that's
tell
how
you
I.
one good thing about the mainstream alternative media, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and all that crew. Now your everyday schmo and your neighbor down the street are aware of a lot of these topics that they may have never heard before. So now it's easier to broach a lot of these with, strangers on the street. And I have no problem nowadays. I would walk down the street and hold up a sign talking about the pedophile lizard people, and everybody would just be like, yeah, that's probably true. So
Yeah,
we're in a very interesting time right now, either way.
it is an extremely interesting time. That's why I can't decide whether it's a mass awakening or a mass deception, because
Mm,
there has to be a reason that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, all these once mainstream voices are now allowed to,
yeah,
give away such information. But then, like, they're directing everything towards the Jew,
I
you
know
know,
it's
the
ridiculous.
big scary Jew, you know.
Yeah,
Like, I'm by no means like let's not be naive either. Of course, they're a big player in the game, but they're not the only ones,
so
and
are a
if
lot
we're
of others. Yeah.
And if we're allowed to, call them out, even though it looks like we're not, we're being forced towards only calling them out because you've got Jeffrey Epstein in the news, you've got Candace Owens constantly hammering home it was the Jews killed Charlie Kirk or whatever. And in reality, to me, that was one of the most staged looking things I've ever seen in my life.
Mm,
That
yeah.
affected me in one way, and that was, oh, this is more bullshit. I don't even believe the guy's dead, to be honest.
It's so convoluted, and it's almost impossible to sift through everything that has come to light. It's pretty crazy. But you mentioned all the groups that have different power, and you can look at everything from the Catholics to even the Mormons. And I'm floored at how corrupt and insane some of the Mormon ideologies and how they're involved with secret societies and the New World Order.
Well,
It's
they're hand
pretty
in hand with
insane.
the Vatican,
They
so they are.
they're pretty big players in all this, apparently.
100%. So they have the Santa Lisa, uh, is it's like a military arm of the Vatican,
Mm,
and they work alongside the Mormon Church. I mean, there's a Mormon Church in the Vatican itself, like in Rome.
yeah,
Like, why would there ever be a need for another religion in the Catholic
right.
capital? It makes no sense. And like, there has to be an end game for these people, and I believe they think that they are going to be able to outsmart the inevitable, which is the return of
Mm,
of Jesus, and being like a technologically higher place to be able to outsmart that. But I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that's not going to happen, guys.
yeah.
But
I have to wonder if they're just that stupid, or if they know that it's impossible to accomplish, but we're going to take out as many of you as possible, and we're going to cause as much death and destruction and horror in the process of taking everything down. But we know, in a sense, we're going to lose. That's the only answer that I could possibly see that makes sense.
how do you protect yourself, like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, doing this kind of work?
Mm. That's been a journey as well. I have Christ with me. That's number one. I mean, like you said, when you have that, really nothing that can affect you, and especially your everyday things that happen, even the crazy things that I hear about when I'm doing my show, the craziest of crazy corruption and horrible thing. I have that strength and I have that armor, that spiritual armor of Christ. So none of that really affects me anymore. I navigate it with an open mind, but I also have the knowledge and the awareness that no matter what is being presented, excuse me, I've already established that connection and path, and I found my way home essentially. So that's it, man. I think that's the most important thing, because without that, it was, God, every day was anxiety and not knowing what's the next horrible thing I'm gonna have to hear, and just being lost in a lot of things and not knowing how to present my own insights into things, because mainly it was terrifying to try and navigate some of this stuff. But yeah, I'd say a relationship with God for me is the biggest thing. Another one is the wonderful wife that I have. She keeps me grounded, she keeps me sane, and she's helping me navigate through the madness. And my wonderful dog Sally, and
Dogs
we get
are
it done.
definitely sent by God.
Yes.
Dogs are
Yeah.
definitely sent by God. I mean, I've only recently come off a lot of drugs, shall we say. I've only
Mhm.
recently became clean and sober, 11 days to be precise.
Oh, awesome, brother!
And
Congratulations.
thank you very much. I had a slip up yesterday and I had a joint, and I never want to smoke another joint again in my life. I freaked out to
Mm,
the highest degree. I'm
yeah.
doing it publicly as well and holding myself accountable so I can hopefully bring other people along for the journey too.
Right
But
on.
it was pretty tough having to admit the slip, but it's important to be honest,
Mm,
on your journey as well, or it will ultimately get consumed by darkness. If I was to lie about that, I'm lying to myself, I'm lying to those that I'm purporting to be recovering to. It's only gonna go one way. Now, throughout the worst of my times, the most centering thing for me has always been the dogs, and there's no mistake, it's God spelled
mm.
backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a real common spirit about just like I have three dogs, and I actually used to be very indifferent to dogs, and then I got my wife a dog for her birthday, and I have turned into like the most doggy person ever. Like I will stop
Yeah,
and chase dogs around streets in random countries. Just, can I stroke your dog?
yeah.
Like they're just the best spirits on planet Earth, and I feel humanity could learn a lot from the loyalty and just the on unboundless love they have. Like
Yeah,
you leave the house for 5 minutes and come back, and it's like you're the most amazing thing that's ever entered their life. It's fantastic. Like,
yeah, yeah. I definitely owe so much to my dog, and we have 3 dogs. One of them is technically for one of our friends that we're taking care of. Another one we just inherited from, unfortunately, one of my wife's good friends passed away, and we took his, he went to give his dog to us, so we've got a senior dog now. But you're absolutely right. They are gods. They're little gods spelled backwards. So amazing
yeah,
creatures.
beautiful, beautiful creatures. What sort of breeds do you have?
I have Mutt. Sally is a healer golden retriever mix, and
Okay,
then the senior dog is a border collie.
so we have two American bulldogs and a French bulldog, and
Oh, I love the bulldogs.
the wee French bulldog is the smallest, but she rules the fucking roost. I mean, she
Yeah.
won't let someone like she'll bark at them to try to get on the sofa and all. Like she is a wee terrorist, but
Yeah.
the best wee terrorist you'll ever meet. What advice other than get a
Mm.
dog would you give to somebody who's just waking up for the first time and
Ooh.
starting to see that this reality is a fucking joke?
So for me, I can only say what worked for me is I went through a lot of the knowledge. You can learn a bunch of shit, but it just ends up being a bunch of extra nonsense that's really not important in your life. And don't get me wrong, having an understanding of what's happening and knowledge about these topics and deeper knowledge than you would ever have learned in school, I condone full-heartedly. I think you should learn as much as possible, but you have to have a foundation for everything. And for me, it was a spiritual foundation. And for me, it was through God and Christ. But, to each his own. I think that you need to find that connection to something just beyond yourself, really. And that's the best advice I could give, because nothing else is going to bring you the balance like a spiritual path would. So that's what I'd say.
Beautifully put. So I don't like to keep people much longer than an hour. Now, Forbidden Knowledge News is a platform that's been pushing conversations into places the mainstream refuses to go. And our audience appreciates that and appreciates voices willing to challenge the script. So, for everyone watching, please do check out Forbidden Knowledge channel. You have it on Rumble. I'm going to put it all in the description anyway. So, you have Rumble, you have YouTube back, and you're on TikTok. And where else can they find you?
all the podcast platforms, all the audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, and if you're still on Rockfin, we're on there too, but that's the main ones, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you just want to stay on for a wee second, just while we close here. So, everybody, if you could like, share, and subscribe. Probably should have said that at the start of the video, but like, share, subscribe, and hit the hype button and all that jazz. And thank you for joining us for another interesting conversation. And thank you very much, Chris, for taking the
Thank you,
time out of
Mark.
your day and
Yeah.
with us.